by the Committee on Agriculture. Madam Speaker, as I support this report, I want to appreciate the diligence of a young Kenyan from Bomet who has actually educated us on what is going on in this country. The reason why we have seeds which are prone to diseases is simply because of failure by our institutions to perform their work. We have an institution called KEFIS, Madam Speaker, which is supposed to provide a service. It is also supposed to regulate seeds in this country. But it appears that for 12 years, a disease has attacked the basic, in fact, the food that sustains this economy. And for those 12 years, they have done nothing about it. To a point where in 2021, Madam Speaker, Bomet County lost almost 90% of its maize crop. And yet we have institutions that collect billions of shillings to be able to ensure that our farmers are protected. Madam Speaker, these are the kind of things that make some of us propose legislations to be able to separate some of these tasks that they are given. And I want to tell the Honorable Kenyan who brought this petition that this petition will not just go like any other petition. Because, you know, most of the time when Kenyans come and petition here, just because you're given the right by the Constitution to petition, it is quite seldom that action is taken, or whatever the recommendation we give are fully implemented. But this is one of those petitions, Madam Speaker, that is actionable, that the ones that we can be able to implement because it touches on our own existence. If you tell the people of Rift Valley that they cannot be able to grow maize, and I had my good friend Emel saying that because of all these disadvantages and because of all these challenges, he's now telling his constituents to try and diversify. I understand where he's coming from. But as a farmer like me, I have to grow maize because apart from feeding my own family with the maize and my community, I also have to feed my cows with that maize. But the truth of the matter is that I cannot feed my cows with maize that have got a disease because I'll pass that disease to other people who are not even there. So what is the neatest thing to do, Madam Speaker? The Committee on Agriculture has done its task. All the distinguished senators who spoke here have also supported this committee and emphasized on the findings of the committee. Agriculture is devolved. It is about time that county governments ensure that their field officers across rural homes to guarantee that the seeds which are sold by Kenya Seed, the seeds which are sold by all these agrovets are certified. Madam Speaker, within the next few weeks, I'll be introducing an amendment to the Seed and Plant Variety Act. And this is the Plant Variety Act, and I'll be seeking to introduce a standard-based seed registration system to facilitate timely approval of seed varieties. Madam Speaker, the problem we have now is that KEFIS is headed by a cartel, Madam Speaker. When you find basic seeds approval process taking years, who are we protecting? We are definitely not protecting the farmers. We are protecting people who introduce seeds here, maize, beans, and do not want any other variety to be introduced that can be able to adjust to the different changes of our climate. Madam Speaker, my bill, which is already now being sent for pre-publication, will deal with these issues. And I was so happy when I read this report because it is like we're intertwined. We were sitting down with the Committee on Agriculture and looking at the things, the prayers. If you read the prayers of this petitioner, it's very simple. They're saying, number one, please make sure that any seeds which are sold for maize are seeds which do not have any diseases. Madam Speaker, when I introduce my bill, you will see that I've taken that into consideration. Because it is now imperative that we now try to separate. Because a lot of seeds that comes into this country are coming either from abroad. We have KEFIS, which should provide a service. But I'm a firm believer that KEBS, which is fully equipped, can be able to ensure that the seeds, the certified seeds, are actually good for this economy. Because the problem is that when you have one government entity that is tasked by approving seeds variety, inspecting those seeds varieties, believe it or not, there's always room for mischief because they know they are, quote unquote, the alpha and the omega. They are the ones who make all the decisions. So it is time for us to listen to what is happening on the ground to make sure that any seeds, varieties that are sold in this country, are seeds that, one, are clearly labeled, and you can be able to follow them. And we should actually now ensure that whoever sells any seeds that have got some form of disease, they pay. The petitioner is seeking a form of support, compensation. You know, we need to encourage, we need to educate our farmers that there are insurance policies that can protect their crops. Madam Speaker, we are all farmers here, I believe. The distinguished senator from Bomet, Council Hilary Sigei, recently harvested his wheat. But because we had a crisis in the country, all he did was to store that wheat until we find a situation where we can be able to sell. And all that was brought by the fact that when this Council of Ministers are sitting down, they don't really have a picture of what is happening on the ground. So decision that is affecting our people is not made locally, it is made elsewhere, so that our people continue to suffer. It is important, Madam Speaker, that now, before any seeds are imported from outside the country to be used locally, we encourage innovation to be able to develop local seeds. Number two, before any wheat is imported, we make sure that there is absolutely no wheat in this country. Before any maize is imported, we make sure that there is absolutely no maize in this country. Because I dare say, Madam Speaker, that sometimes, because of business interest, some people will try to sell seeds that will ensure that there is a shortage of maize in the country so that they can be able to import millions of metric tons into this country. Because we are a consumer economy, we must now change to becoming a producer economy. We should be producing and selling. It is a shame, Madam Speaker, that now, because of all these challenges that we are facing in the wheat sector, Kenya is only producing, listen to this, Madam Speaker, out of the 100% wheat consumed in this country, the wheat that we produce in Narok, in Uasin Gishu, in Nyandarua County is only 5 to 8%. Yet, the millers here cannot even mop up that 8 to 5%. They will still go and import from outside the country. As we speak today, Madam Speaker, and I'm happy, let me really appreciate the work of the new Cabinet Secretary in charge of Agriculture, Mutahi Kagwe, because he was able to listen and to see where the problem is. And he said, guys, I know you have 260,000 metric tons of wheat in the pot, but guess what? My farmers in Narok, my farmers in Uasin Gishu, my farmers in Laikipia have got about 320,000 bags. You need to go buy all those bags first before you can be able to be given approval to offload the ship. You can pay the demurrage as you wish. They're all crying. But we just have to be our brother's keepers. We have to make sure that we protect the people who give us an opportunity to serve them here. So this gentleman, Hilary, from Bomet, should awaken should awaken our desire to help uplift the standard of living of our people. And this should actually be very dear to all of us. It should be something that we take seriously. Because if those people are not happy, trust me, you are the ones who will get all those phone calls saying, help us. So, Madam Speaker, it is imperative, and I'm happy that the committee is fully recommending, that one, the Ministry of Agriculture must develop a support mechanism for these rural farmers. That support mechanism cannot be left only to the Ministry of Agriculture. It also has to go down to the county governments. I'm happy that all of us are thinking that we should introduce more field, what are they called? Field technicians. Agricultural extension officers. But as when we were growing up, it was fun being a kid in this country. Because you will find these agricultural field officers coming. In fact, back then, when we were growing wheat, you would go to school knowing that there's a crop here, there's somebody already coming to buy that crop. So even if you don't have school fees, the fact that you have a crop in the field gives you a ticket to an education. Now, nobody is sure of what they plant, whether they'll be able to harvest it. Madam Speaker, you should have seen the frustration and the anger of those wheat farmers in Narok. When I attempted to talk to them and ask them, guys, what's going on? They were like, where were you when we were suffering? Little did we know that we have things that we must now ask ourselves on how we educate our farmers. Because the biggest problem we have is that we are not educating our farmers. When in Nyeri County farmers are complaining about tea, coffee, unless the distinguished senator from Nyeri goes there and educate them, to tell you the truth, maybe the county government may not invest in educating those people. So since we have this national platform, let us ensure that the decisions we make here are decisions that will trickle down. Madam Speaker, this House is a House of Union. It unites the entire 47 counties on issues that are affecting our people. I was listening to the distinguished senator from Tana River talking about the compensation of the farmers there. You know, I think the way we are busy drumming up support for SHA and the way we are saying we want universal health care is the way now we should now start drumming up support for food security. In fact, I wish the National Assembly would be listening to this, because we should now be encouraging industries to be established in rural areas, and we waive 100% taxes for innovation, because that is the only way. Madam Speaker, if you have industries across the 47 counties, you will encourage more people to develop new seeds, to be able to grow crops. There's absolutely no reason as to why I should be buying maize from Mombasa. Unga ya ugali from Mombasa, yet I'm growing maize in Narok. How many people are in Narok, Madam Speaker? Over 1.4 million people. That economy in itself should be able to figure out how it can be able to sustain itself. And the only way to sustain itself is sometimes it might behoove us, and I'm glad that the distinguished senator from Bungoma is listening. It behooves us now to think about how do we devolve all these services. If it is a seed inspectory service, let's take it to Bungoma. Let's take it to Narok. Let's take it to Bomet. So that immediately we realize that there is a disease which is affecting seeds. Action is taken locally. But now, if you go to Karen, or is it Kajiado County, and to go to Kefis there, before they send somebody to the ground, maybe you might be asked to give, fuel, for them to be able to send somebody to go and actually, look at the disease. And this is not only in crops, but it's also even in our livestock. Madam Speaker, did you know that for them to test these pesticides. And not only pesticides, these parasites, the ones for spraying cows, they will go to Transmara County. That's where they'll do all the testing. So if you have a cow in Bungoma County that has got a tick-borne disease, if a new parasite has been brought that can be able to help solve that problem, unless the testings are done in Transmara County, in Kilgoris, there's no way you can be able to use that parasite. So I think we need to divorce ourselves from this old mentality and control and bureaucracy and open the field. So I hope that, as I conclude, that the Agriculture Committee will support my bill once the bill is tabled, because it goes into the core of this petition, so that at least this Parliament can be remembered as having solved the problem of that maize disease. Finally, Madam Speaker, I think it is time that KEFIS mop up all the seeds, maize seeds, which are causing that disease. There's no way you can have one seed for 12 years. That disease is brought every year, there's something wrong with it, unless there's somebody protecting it. So, Kenya Seed and all these other companies that are selling seeds must now look at that seed. Well, now, you know, I think, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of seeds is coming from Kitale. But I'm not seeing those diseases in Kitale. I wonder what is going on. Is it the pesticides that we use that is causing those diseases? Because seeds, maize seeds are grown in Kitale. When they come there, they are certified that they are good. But once they are planted in Narok, in Bomet, they have diseases. Is it the pesticides? Is it that we have really corrupted our soils to a point where any crop you put, it just dies? Those are the questions that we must ask ourselves. Otherwise, I fully support this report, and I hope that the Agriculture Committee, even though we don't have an implementation committee, will follow through to make sure that all your recommendations, which are sound, can actually be implemented. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator for Bomet, Wakili Hilary Sigei.
Madam Speaker, let me begin by appreciating the chairperson of the Agriculture Committee, the Honorable Senator Wakoli, who has moved this report this afternoon, together with the rest of the members of that committee, particularly those who were involved in the investigations to the petition that was filed before the committee and leading to this report today. To the team, it is one thing to receive it, it's another thing to make the recommendations that they have made in regard to this particular petition. Madam Speaker, when history is written, this young man, Kerich Hilary, who is my namesake, Kiprono, and who comes from the ward that I come from in Bomet County, will go into the right path of that history, for the reason that in the year 2011 and 12 years thereafter, leading all the way to 2021, 2022, Madam Speaker, this maize lethal necrosis disease indeed affected over 90% of the entire crop within Bomet County. It did not just affect the crop, it affected the entire livelihood of thousands and thousands of people. The decision by Kerich to file this petition and to seek for the recommendations that ultimately has come from this committee has really made me proud as a citizen of this country, particularly where it is speaking to the mainstay of the livelihoods of thousands of people. Madam Speaker, the disease did not only affect Bomet County alone. In fact, when you look at the report itself and the investigations that were conducted, it has spread over the country, including the neighboring countries. And the recommendations which have been provided for in this report, and the investigations, and in fact, the sensitization that this particular petition has brought in itself is something that is worth being lauded and appreciated. So I would equally like to appreciate the gentleman from Nyangore's ward, Hilary Kiprono Kerich, for taking this bold step. Despite the fact that he lamented in his petition of the efforts that he made prior to filing this petition, he didn't give up. He didn't surrender because he had a vision to seek to establish the root cause of this particular disease. And a description, Madam Speaker, of the condition of the maize as a crop in this particular kind of, that has been affected by this particular kind of a disease is quite worrying, especially when it took more than 10 years for it to be weeded off the shelves or for the government to be able to manage its spread and also the consequences that it has caused. Ordinarily, you would find a mature crop going for up to 2-3 meters high. In this particular case, Madam Speaker, the residents of Bomet, despite investing so much and heavily in their only mainstay, source of livelihood, that is food, source of income, and also, Madam Speaker, the only crop that they would entirely rely on would only pick up to a certain stage, which stage would be barely a meter away, turns yellow, and stagnates from that point. It could affect the rest of the intercrops that is within it, and ultimately, there is zero harvest. Madam Speaker, when we went before the committee, because I also appeared before the committee, the interrogations that went in, including the participation of the Ministry of Agriculture, CALRO, and the relevant other government agencies, brought out the real challenge and the real effect of this particular crop, or rather the disease. But Speaker, the most unfortunate thing and the sad situation about this is the fact that it has taken time, more than 10 years, for this to be out of the shelves. Further challenge has been occasioned by the inability or the unwillingness of those who are involved in the county government, because this is a devolved function. Agriculture is a devolved function, Madam Speaker, where in the absence of a commitment on the part of those who are running the county government and related agencies operating within the county government, the farmers, the residents will have no other recourse but to do what Hillary did, to file petitions before the Senate, leading to the involvement of the Committee on Agriculture to deal with this. The consequences of it, of course, Madam Speaker, went, as I've said, beyond food security, which affected not only the people of Bomet, but it went beyond the county. It is indeed something that would go to the national and the regional level. And the challenge, as I've stated in this aspect, Madam Speaker, is the absence of commitment and involvement of extension officers. The county government, in most cases, and in this case in Bomet, has got a budget that has already been set aside for purposes of this. But instead of investing in such very specific, public, and of great concern agricultural aspects, the funds goes into great waste in what we have now made it as a devolved corruption. And this is one of the reasons why Hillary decided to appear before the Senate. Madam Speaker, on the day that this gentleman appeared, that is in the year 2023, September, that was almost 11 years after the discovery of this particular disease. And the consequences of that appearance, the appearance of the principal secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, and the aspects that they raised to have been the decision the government at the national level took to support on, in the control of the spread of this disease, and also to extend the supervision of the extension officers who ordinarily are expected to support the farmers and all those who are involved in dealing with this situation, is one of the interventions that the government, indeed, at the national level decided to do. This one was aimed at ensuring that this reduction in the extension and the spread of the disease for the future and also to support the farmers in order to ensure that they get appropriate seedlings which are either disease resistant or indeed a different variety that would help the farmer to ensure that they harvest the crop. In other words, there was also a request which in the petition came as a recommendation that farmers should be encouraged to ensure that they also diversify in having other varieties of the crop and also expand to ensure that they, in some instances, take crop insurance that will support them to mitigate the losses. But, Madam Speaker, the major gain out of this particular petition is the recommendation that was made. Among them are, of course, the fact that instead of just dealing with the maize as a crop, whether cash or by definition the mainstay of the farmer, they were encouraged that they should be able to have other varieties that are resistant and also ensure that they participate fully in terms of the engagement by the extension officers so that we're able to educate them on what to do. We're able to have extension services get to the farmers. And this was done by a team that was set up by the Minister of Agriculture, where a multi-sectoral team was picked up to deal with this menace. And, Madam Speaker, as we speak right now, though we still have got this challenge, we still have got the disease, though in some scattered situations or places, the farmer, as we speak right now, have had the latest, should be last year actually, when we had the first harvest of this crop with limited effects of this disease, meaning it's being phased out over time courtesy of the interventions that were done. And in this instance, the interventions that the Ministry of Agriculture, in conjunction with CALRO and other related entities, have participated to support the farmer. Madam Speaker, this could not have happened had it not been for this particular petition. This could not have happened had it not been for Hillary to take it upon himself to create an attention in the context of the disease that has affected farmers. Part of what has happened is also public barazas that the Ministry of Agriculture has done across the 75 divisions in the county, leading to farmers appreciating also planting other varieties or other crops which are alternative to the farmers, particularly in Chepalungu constituency, Madam Speaker, where I come from. Instead of maize, farmers were encouraged to do potatoes, to do sweet potatoes, and such other subsistence crops, which it would not have happened had it not been for this particular petition. There has been also, as a consequence of this petition, a lot of mass communication, or rather mass media, public awareness, and creation of incidences of farmers being informed on what they are supposed to do for purposes of training. The greatest cause of this, Madam Speaker, I believe, was the rampant fake seedlings or seeds that was applied to the farmers. And the most unfortunate situation is, how did it take a government to run for a period of 10 years plus before such is phased out of the market? Nonetheless, Madam Speaker, one of the requests which the petitioner sought is the compensation. It is quite sad that in the year 2012, the government set out a rejection of a request for compensation on the basis of lack of a policy in compensating farmers. I believe the proposed bill that is to be sponsored by the Honorable Senator from Narok, my neighbor, Senator Olekina, will set up a regulation, an enactment in that particular bill on the compensation to farmers, where if farmers are made to lose in their harvest or investment in agriculture, courtesy of such fake seedlings, or even inability on the part of the government to create interventions in good time, farmers are entitled to. And I believe that in the context of the recommendation that has been made by the committee on the petition filed, the demand for compensation is still alive, and I believe that in the fullness of time, the farmers who sought for compensation, having suffered for that period of time, for want of government intervention, will ultimately be entitled to that compensation. And as I end, Madam Speaker, once again, I want to appreciate the contribution by the members. I want to appreciate the members of the Agriculture Committee who went out of their way. I only wish that they had visited this particular county to have specific experience on the type of, or rather the situation that the farmers were going through on the investment that they had made. And in the absence of that visit, Madam Speaker, they still went ahead and have submitted before the House a report that I wish, as we discussed earlier on in the Liaison Committee, that though the Senate do not have an implementation committee, we need to have a consideration of creating the Liaison Committee, comprising of chairpersons of all the committees, as an implementation committee, so that such reports, which are very relevant and core to the lowest level of the representation that we have in this House, get to be implemented in order to ensure that farmers or any other person who has been affected by such mishaps in the course of government administration are compensated for the losses that they have incurred. Madam Speaker, I support this petition, and once again to Hillary, I say proceed to fight for the interest of the farmer and of those who are unable to get to the place that you took this petition to. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Kajwang.
Do I go there? Thank you. Madam Speaker, I also rise to support this report of the Agriculture Committee, which is a response to the petition that was lodged in the Senate by Kerich Kiprono Hillary on the 12th of June 2023. Madam Speaker, I have noted some procedural innovation, which I'm happy about. Previously, when committees had a report responding to a petitioner, the report would just be laid, and that would be the end of it. There could just be some general comments, and that would be the end of it. And I'm happy that now the House has innovated, that when there is a petition or a report on a petition, it is brought to this House as a motion for the House to adopt it. That gives it further effect, because previously the committee would just respond to the petitioner without any resolution of the House. I think this is a very good innovation. Madam Speaker, I also note that petitions are meant to be resolved within a period of 60 to 90 days max with extension. This petition has taken some time, but I'm happy that the committee has come back with a report, and in its conclusion, the committee has given very clear action that should be undertaken by the Ministry for Agriculture and Livestock and the county government of Bomet to respond to the prayers that were put to the Senate by Kerich Kiprono Hillary. Again, because these are innovations, Madam Speaker, how I wish that this report would have a matrix so that we know specifically what the Ministry of Agriculture should do and what the county government of Bomet should do. Agriculture is a shared concurrent function between national and county governments, and so if you do not assign clear responsibility, you end up with a situation where everyone assumes someone else is doing something and end up doing nothing. But all in all, Madam Speaker, this is good that we have responded and we have directed the Ministry of Agriculture to establish programs to ensure that there's financial assistance to the farmers who lost their crop. For example, in 2012, there's a 90% crop failure as a result of the maize lethal necrosis disease. Madam Speaker, there is something happening in county governments that this Senate must address. At the onset of devolution, we had farmers training colleges across the country. I had a farmers training college in my county, in Hobart Bay. And then, when this ambition and thirst for universities came, we converted the FTC to a university, the Tom Mboya University. A beautiful institution, very good infrastructure, and I believe it shall be the host for the next devolution conference. But then we didn't provide an alternative to training of farmers. If today, Madam Speaker, you are to ask the senator from Bungoma, Senator Wakoli, to make for you a dish called lasagna, he won't make it. He does not even know what it is. He has no idea how it looks like. Of course, if you told him to make ugali, he would make it, because he has seen ugali being made. And perhaps his mother taught him how to make ugali. And if the mother didn't, he taught himself how to make ugali at campus, because comrades would know how to take care of themselves. The reason why I'm giving this illustration is that if someone does not teach you how to make lasagna, you will probably never know how to make lasagna. If someone does not teach you crop husbandry, Madam Speaker, you'll fumble, and you'll probably not know how to undertake proper crop or animal husbandry. Our children, the ones we are living with here in Nairobi, Madam Speaker, I told my son some time back that, in a morning like this, I would have already gone to the farm to weed. I would have already come back and milked the cows, and I would have taken the donkeys to the lake to fetch water. And he told me, but Daddy, I can't do those things because we don't have a donkey, we don't have a cow, and we don't have a farm. And so if you expect our children to understand crop husbandry or animal husbandry without teaching them, then we'll be expecting too much. The future of agriculture is bleak in this country because we have killed the units, the colleges, the places where someone who comes from a fish breeding area could go there and learn how coffee is grown. Madam Speaker, you cannot know how to take care of a cow if you are not taught. The natural instinct that God gave humans is how to take care of a human being. Not how to take care of a cow, not how to take care of a calf, not how to milk, not how to feed a cow. We must bring back our farmers' training colleges. And they must not be seen as places for retirees. That once someone has retired in Nairobi, then they go to a farmers' training college so that they can start a poultry project, which then collapses once their pension runs out. It should target young people. Madam Speaker, the fishermen in my area are still using traditional hunting and gathering techniques. They are investing nothing in the lake, but expecting that at the end of the day, they are going to have a full catch. It has been like that for thousands of years, for millions of years, Madam Speaker. That has been how humanity has approached the issue of fishing. They believe that God has put fish in the lake and in the rivers and in the streams, and our job is to go there with a hook and catch. But recently, an American investor called Victory Farms came with cage fish farming, putting cages in the lake that we have had for millions of years, putting fish in those cages in the lake, and giving them food and controlling the environment in which they thrive. Today, Victory Farms is generating 5 billion Kenya shillings gross revenue in a year in a far corner of Suba. Almost the same revenue that the county government of Homa Bay has at its disposal. Why? Because they brought in innovation, they brought in science, they brought in technology, they brought in people who had been taken to school to study fish, how fish breeds, how fish grows, and how fish can be taken care of. We must bring back farmers' training colleges. Planting of maize is not just something you wake up and do. In my community, we would, of course, plow the fields with oxen plows. That in itself is an art. To be able to manage 6 cows tethered on a yoke, pulling one plow, and to be able to do that with straight lines, with straight lines for acres upon acres. Those were traditional techniques, which I don't know who will teach them. Perhaps mechanization has made that obsolete. But Madam Speaker, when I go to the village, I am told that the farms that were tilled using tractors, compared to the farms that were tilled using oxen, the farms tilled using tractors, the tractors tend to turn the soil too deep. And as a result, it brings up certain pests that are buried further down. And our people have got very interesting knowledge. They will tell you this farm was plowed using a tractor, this farm was plowed using an ox. Now, the skills on oxen plowing is virtually dead, and I don't think it used to be taught in farmers' training colleges. Now, after you have plowed your farm, Madam Speaker, we would then plant seed, and that seed would not come from a shop. The seed would be the residue from the last harvest. And what our people would do is that if you got a good crop, you'd choose the biggest corns or the biggest ears of maize, and then you'd dry it, and then you'd put ash on it, and then you'd stick it on the roof, and it was a grass-thatched roof, particularly where there's a kitchen, so that for the entire year the smoke would billow, and that seed would harden, and it would not be attacked by weevils or any other pests, so that the next season you could plant it. Madam Speaker, there are now innovations, there are now seed that can grow in different areas, but our people do not have the knowledge because they do not have access to farming, training, and innovations that they're supposed to get through the county governments. Once you have planted the seed, you come back to weed your farm, and you find your farm has got a beautiful purple foliage of a weed called striga. Madam Speaker, there is no other weed that is as beautiful but as damaging. The striga weed, just like the maize lethal necrosis disease that we're discussing right now, it affects Bomet, it affects Homa Bay. But one other big pest that we have to contend with in our regions is that very beautiful purple flower. When you're driving past or when you're passing a farm, you'd be amazed. This is a beautiful farm, very beautiful purple flowers. But that is the biggest pest that we have to contend with. Madam Speaker, for some time, ICIPE, the International Center for Insect Physiology and Ecology, based in Mbita Town in Homa Bay County, tried to help farmers to deal with the striga menace. Of course, the only solution that seems to work so far is for farmers to pull out the striga at an early age. And striga, the seed propagates through the roots. So if you don't pull it out, if you don't pull out the entire thing from the roots, then it continues to propagate. In fact, a field that has been plowed using a tractor, because the striga weeds, the seeds go very deep. Our people are saying that when you use a tractor, then it brings up the seeds, and then you've got a beautiful purple foliage of a pest. Now, our people didn't know how to deal with striga, and it really stunts maize, and I think it would affect production by more than 60%. It also drives up the cost of producing an acre, because you have to weed not just once, you have to weed twice. And yet there are they called these things for killing weeds in farms? I'm not sure whether they are caricides or they're called herbicides. Madam Speaker, our people don't know how to use herbicides. They can't imagine that there's something that you can spray in your farm to kill herbs and to preserve the maize. They can only do that through demonstration farms and through training. They also don't know that you can use fertilizer, because naturally our soil is fertile. But someone should demonstrate to them that when you use fertilizer, then your production goes higher. All the way through the chain, Madam Speaker, including harvesting. You harvest your maize, you take it to the market, then you are told it has got aflatoxin. And Madam Speaker, as a person who grew up in the village going through these processes, I can tell you I do not know how aflatoxin looks like. I don't know whether anyone in this house can look at maize and say this one has got aflatoxin and this one does not have aflatoxin visually. Because we would harvest and would gather everything, put them on donkey-drawn carriages, put them in a granary, leave them in a granary, put some little ash on them so that they can survive to the next harvest. But then when you take your maize to the farm, you're told it has aflatoxin. Can someone come and teach us how aflatoxin looks like? Can someone come and tell us what to do with our soil? Because we hear that aflatoxin comes from the soil. What should we do so that that aflatoxin does not get into the maize, so that our maize can go to the market? Madam Speaker, 10 years, FTCs have died. We must now push for the revival of the FTCs. And when we'll be coming to Homa Bay, if you're doing the Devolution conference at Tomboya University College, let's remember that that was a farmers training college. and for the benefit of farmers in Bomet and in other counties, let's push. If each county cannot do an FTC, let us then have regional centers of excellence where our farmers can be taught what to do. We passed a law in this house called the Warehouse Receipt System. We've got a Warehouse Receipt Systems Council in this country. The Warehouse Receipt System, Madam Speaker, was supposed to move maize farmers from peasant subsistence farmers to people who could use their produce as collateral. You go harvest your maize, you have been trained how to tell whether it has aflatoxin or not, you take it to warehouse, a certified warehouse, you keep your 100 bags of maize in that certified warehouse, and you are given a warehouse receipt. And with that warehouse receipt, your child should never be sent away from school because it is as good as cash. To what extent have our farmers understood that concept? Or is it just the big millers, the big farmers, who are taking advantage of that situation, taking advantage of good storage facilities offered by the National Cereal and Produce Board, because I believe that they are one of the registered warehouses where you can make your depository of crop and get a warehouse receipt. Perhaps, and since I sit with Senator Wakoli in the Agriculture Committee, it is time for this House to query to what extent has a warehouse receipt system been adopted in this country? What is the level of understanding or appreciation of our farmers? Because, Madam Speaker, maize farmers walk around as if they're the poorest people. And we can only fix that by bringing them back to the cash economy. Madam Speaker, as I finalize, because this is a petition and already the committee has given directives, for me, my only emphasis is let's help our farmers to get the best practice, best science, best innovations that can help them to do agriculture, not just as a hobby, but to do agriculture as a cash and economically empowering activity. And let us also push the Ministry of Agriculture. Madam Speaker, we don't have a clear agricultural sector strategy in this country. When Mwai Kibaki took over, we had the strategy for revitalization of agriculture. Through the strategy for revitalization of agriculture, we collapsed all the many parastatals and put up one thing called the Agriculture Food Fisheries Authority. 10 years later, from AFA, we have divested fishery. From AFA, we have divested livestock. We have divested tea. We have divested coffee. We have divested milk. We have reversed everything that the Kibaki government put forth because that was what was going to help us realize Vision 2030. Today, we don't have a coherent plan. The last one was called Agricultural Sector Transformation and Growth Strategy that was launched by either Munya or Linturi. The current CS for Agriculture should come to this House and tell us what is the overarching agricultural sector strategy and how it fits into the Vision 2030 so that we can ensure that our farmers are not just beggars, that our farmers, particularly those who are women and youth, can also be part of the cash economy. Madam Speaker, with that, I support. Thank you.
Senator Ndindi.
Asante Mbi Speaker kwa kunipa ruhusa niweze kuchangia mjadala ambayo unaendelea wa kamati ya kilimo ambaye mimi mwenyekiti mdogo wa hiyo kamati. Mbi Speaker, yangu ni kusema katika Kenya kaunti ya 47 kilimo ndio mstari wa kwanza, na katika Kenya chakula ile muhimu ni mambo ya ugali ambaye inatokana na mahindi na pia mambo ya mchele. Mbi Speaker, tukifuatilia na mambo hiyo yote inatokana na mambo ya kilimo, na kama kuna kitu imewachwa mstari wa mwisho haiwekwi kipaumbele ni mambo ya kilimo na haswa ya mahindi na mchele, kwa sababu yale tunachambua hapa imeendelea kwa kipindi ya mwaka 11, miaka 12. Ni mambo ya ajabu kwa sababu miaka mingi tumekuwa tukichambua mambo ya kilimo, kwa sababu tunajua mambo ya kilimo. Mbi Speaker, tunajua mfanyikazi aidha ni mkubwa ama ni mdogo, ama ni waziri ama si waziri, aidha ni mtoto wa shule ama si mtoto wa shule. Siku hizi kilimo tunakiweka kipaumbele kwa sababu hata vijana wetu wakikosa kazi tunaelimisha Speaker waende kuangalia mambo ya kilimo. Speaker, tunaongea kilimo ya mahindi ambayo iko Bomet, vile tuliona mambo inaendelea. Speaker, nikumbusha seneti wakati wa zamani, wakati Rais Moi alikuwa anaongoza, tunakumbuka vizuri kulikuwa na mambo ya wale watu extension agricultural officers ambaye walikuwa nafunza watu mambo ya monyoko wa udongo, na pia Speaker mambo ya kupanda miti na pia usimbanji wa mitaro. Speaker, mambo ya kilimo katika wakati huu imekuwa na shinda. Na ninakumbuka vizuri Speaker, kama tunaweza kusikilia mambo ya kilimo Speaker, tunaweza kuwa tunakaa vizuri, kwa sababu kama mtu akikosa chakula, akikosa msaada Speaker, na awe na pesa yake hata kidogo, nakumbuka wakati tulichaguliwa mwaka wa kipindi 2022 kulikuwa na janga la njaa, lakini Mungu akasaidia Speaker na mvua ikanyesha, na tulikumbuka tulikuta unga wa mahindi kilo 2 ikitoka shilingi 210. Speaker, wakati mvua ilinyesha na kilimo ikawa nzuri, kwa sababu Mungu alipatiana mvua, ilikuwa kama saa hii inatoka shilingi 130. Speaker, kama Mungu alitusaidia, kama watu wa serikali upande wa agriculture, kama wangetusaidia ile mambo inafaa, kama ya mbegu nzuri, mambo ya mbegu, mambo ya usimbanji wa dams na kila kitu Speaker, upande wa kilimo ya mahindi hatungesikia hiyo mambo imefanyika katika hiyo county. Speaker, tunaweza kuchangia tukisema ni county moja ya Bomet. Speaker, tunajua sio county moja ya Bomet, ni county nyingi. Ni vile Speaker ile senator aliona kwao hiyo mambo inaendelea, na mambo mingi watu wameifunikia na wakuweza kuangalia kutaendeaje. Kwa hiyo Speaker, naunga mkono vile kamati ya agriculture ambaye mimi mwenyekiti mdogo vile tulichambua hiyo maneno na tukasema wale watu waweze kusaidiwa. Ndio Speaker, watu wengi wamekuwa kinena, kumekuwa hata saa nyingine Speaker, upande wa agriculture watu waambiwa waweke bima ya insurance, lakini Speaker, hakuna mtu yoyote huwa na gari upenda kuweka insurance yalipwe pesa. Speaker, hata mambo ya kilimo hakuna mtu angetaka kuweka bima aweze kupata pesa. Kwa hiyo Speaker, ningeomba serikali ambayo inatuongoza ya Kenya Kwanza iweke kipaumbele mambo ya kilimo ya hii tunachangia mambo ya mahindi Speaker. Nikichambua vizuri Speaker, nikisema kama upande mchele unalimwa kama kaunti ya Kirinyaga na kaunti zile zingine, ukienda pale Speaker, saa hii kaunti ya Kirinyaga wandundu wale wako pale ni wengi sana, na Speaker saa ile kule kuna watu wanaitwa agricultural officers, lakini Speaker wameshindwa na ile wandundu ambaye wako kule, unakuta ile ukulima wa mambo ya Speaker ya mchele imelete sinda. Speaker, sio peke yake huko, hata huko Kisumu na kila kona sote. Kwa hiyo Speaker, mpaka tuongee vile mkulima ataweza kusaidiwa, kwa sababu katika serikali ya Kenya Kwanza agenda yao ya kwanza ni mambo ya kilimo, ni mambo ya afya, ni mambo ya parapara na mambo ya elimu. Speaker, hiyo mambo yote mpaka tuilete pamoja, au watu wote hiyo wizara iweze kuangaliwa njia ile inafaa. Speaker, nikisema mambo ya kilimo katika Embu County, ukienda tunaongea mambo ya majani Speaker, tunaongea mambo ya kahawa, tunaongea mambo ya maembe. Unakuta Speaker, hata maembe iko na shinda, na hiyo iko pamoja na kilimo, unakuta iko na wandundu, unakuta watu wanalima, lakini unakuta wakati waenda kuvuna wanafuna maembe ile haifai na ile maembe mbaya. Kwa hiyo Speaker, mambo ya kilimo tukiangalia, tunataka tuangalie sio kaunti moja, tunafaa tuangalie katika kaunti 47. Speaker, nikiwa senator ambaye wa Embu County, nakumbuka ile kaunti ya Embu Speaker, katika upande wa Mbeere South na Mbeere North Speaker, huko kilimo yetu ni mambo ya kitu inaitwa murasitu muguka, na unajua iko katika crop act Speaker. Unakuta hata ile kilimo ya murasitu muguka Speaker hainjaangaliwa vizuri. Unakuta hata ndawa Speaker, wizara ya kilimo hainjaangalia watu wataweza kuisaidia mna gani ndio kilimo yao iweze kuendelea vizuri. Kwa hiyo Speaker, mambo mingi katika wizara ya kilimo serikali iweze kuangalia wale wasomi vizuri ambaye waangalia mambo ya kilimo vizuri, ndio kama kaunti zetu zote siwe kitu ya kwanza, iwe na maji kama ndamsile kubwa ya kupeleka maji kwa wale watu wanalima, iwe na pia water pan na pia boho na pia kushika maji, kwa sababu kama sasa Mr. saa hii mvua inaenda kunyesha, unakuta saa hii janga la njaa inaonekana kwa sababu hakuna maji na hakuna Mr. mambo ya storage ya kuweka maji. Kwa hiyo Mr. tukiongea mambo ya vitu zile zingine zote pamoja na zile zingine, kilimo ni ya njia nyingi. Tunataka Mr. kwa sababu tunajua kilimo iko katika kaunti ya 47 na iko katika Devolution. Sisi tukiwa maseneta, ningeomba kuonekane kama kunaweza kuwa wakati wa budget Mr. Kama Mr. kutakuwa na pesa imetangwa, wakati kumeonekana mimea yetu Mr. imeleta shinda, unakuta senators itakuwa na ile hela inaweza kupitisha wakulima wakipata shinda waweze kusaidiwa. Kwa sababu Mr. mambo ya mbegu zote unakuta wale watu company ya Sind inapeana mbegu mbaya, hata mahindi, hata maharagwe na vitu zile zingine. Kwa hiyo Mr. mpaka tujiandae wakati huu, unakuta Senate ni hapa house iweze kuangalia vile itasaidia mkulima. Sio mambo ya ukulima peke yake Mr. hata mambo ya mazao yetu bali tutaweza kuuza katika nchi zile zingine. Kama sasa nakumbuka Mr. mambo ya kilimo ya mbuzi na ng'ombe, juzi tu serikali ilikuwa inaonelea vizuri iwe ng'ombe na mbuzi sikindungwa sindano juu ya biashara yetu, ndio zile nyama wale watu wa Northeastern wao wakiuza kule nchi za ng'ambo. Mr. yende ikawa hiyo mambo haikuwa mbaya, lakini kwa sababu hakukuwa na mambo ya public participation, ningeomba Mr. mambo mingi, kwa sababu siku hizi tuko katika nchi ya demokrasia Mr. mambo mingi ikifanyika kuwe na mambo ya public participation, ndio mkulima ama mwananchi au akiwa anaendelea anajua nini anaendelea. Kwa hiyo Mr. ningeomba watu wengi kama kaunti ya Embu iweze kusaidiwa mambo mingi na maji ya mboo na ndamu zile vitu zingine na pia na ndawa. Na pia Mr. ningeomba kufanywa research wale agricultural officers wakienda Embu ile mrasi lokomoka iende ikawa ile tumefanya research kidogo inaweza kuwa wakati moja itatengeneza juice na wine na mbigiji na pia inaweza kutoka hata ndawa. Kwa hiyo ningeomba Mr. mambo ya agriculture tuweke kipaumbele, ndio mkulima aidha ni wa aina gani, kitu yote ifanywe research iweze kuonekana itasaidia Mkenya namna gani. Pia Mr. after hiyo mambo yote kufanyika, ningeomba serikali iweze kutusaidia mambo ya mazao yetu, tukiuza kule nchi za ng'ambo tuuze na njia ile nafaa. Kama unakuta Mr. tunakumbuka miezi 3 imeisha Mr. mambo ya kitu inaitwa makandamia imeleta shinda. Wakati tulichaguliwa ilikuwa toka shilingi 30 per kilo, lakini Mr. sisi ma senators na agriculture tukakaa pamoja tukaona ikaendelea ikakuja shilingi Mr. shilingi 130. Lakini wakati kulisemekana Mr. yende ikawa kwa kipindi ya miaka 3 Mr. mambo ya makandamia watu wengi watakuwa merima na itakuwa inauzwa huko nje ya ng'ambo. Mr. ningeomba watu wafunzwe vizuri, ifanywe public participation, waambie ni kwa nini haitakuwa nanuliwa, ndio mkulima awache kulia, kwa sababu kuna shinda mambo pia ya makandamia na tunajua kaunti nyingi inalima vitu inaitwa makandamia. Kwa hiyo Mr. mimi nikiwa mwenyekiti mdogo wa hii kamati ya agriculture naunga hiyo mjadala mkono, na nikimalizia ningeomba kila mbegu ya aina yote kuonekane kama kuna mbegu ile haitakuwa inakaa kwa muda mrefu. Kwa hiyo Mr. mimi nikiwa Central Embu County naunga mkono. Mimi ni Daktari Alexander Ndindi. Asante bwana, asante sana Mr.
Senator for Nyeri, Senator Wamatinga.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I was actually quite worried that my colleague from Embu will take all the time. Madam Speaker, I do proudly sit in the Agricultural Committee, and I'm happy that I'll be sitting there with you, with our able chairman, Senator for Bungoma. Madam Speaker, agriculture is the backbone of our economy. I do come from a county, Nyeri County, a land of many opportunities that lies between two water towers, endowed with the richness of coffee, one of the best, endowed with the richness of tea. We have the best producers in Nyeri. But equally, Madam Speaker, we also do maize growing as staple food. However, the practice that we've continued to have in our style and technology of farming has remained the same over the last couple of decades. I do recall, and vividly so, Madam Speaker, that indeed, when I was going to the farm with my grandmother, the technology that we used of plow and plant, the harvesting, the post-harvest management of the crop has remained pretty much the same. However, Madam Speaker, we are all aware that the environment, the climate, and the global warming has contributed to quite many factors that have affected our farm produce negatively. Therefore, Madam Speaker, it is imperative that given the changing times, given the changing technologies, that we must leverage the available technology to ensure that we do not only get the best seeds, but we also have the best management of some of the pests and diseases that affect our crops. Madam Speaker, as a member of the Agricultural Committee, I've had an opportunity to visit a number of countries across the globe, and I've had the opportunity also to see some of the best practices. Some of these pests, some of these diseases, Madam Speaker, they can be controlled using biotechnology that's available. We know some of these main diseases, and indeed all the crop diseases, can be modified in a way that they are not going to affect our crops. It is also not lost to us, Madam Speaker, that Kenya used to be one of the leading countries in this part of the world in terms of agricultural technology. I do recall when JKUAT was being financed by JICA, one of the informing factors, Madam Speaker, was to make it a hub to produce agro-engineers who will be able to steer this country into ensuring that we have food security. Madam Speaker, the entrance of devolution after the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution brought a lot of good tidings to the Kenyans. But with it also came a lot of misfortune. One of them being that we devolved, and rightfully so, Madam Speaker, agriculture, but instead of institutionalizing some of these institutes, like research centers, because some of the counties that we have in this country, Madam Speaker, are too small not to be able to afford to have the technology that they would need to do the research. And therefore, Madam Speaker, it is imperative that we will leverage the institutions of higher learning that we have in this country, and we make sure that we bring all the stakeholders together, be it the county government, the farmers and research institutions, so that we can be able to mobilize resources, pull resources together, so that some of this research that needs a lot of resources, needs a lot of advanced knowledge and technology can be done. Madam Speaker, when we brought in devolution, field extension officers, which were during our times very many and all over, some county governments could not afford to finance them. And therefore, Madam Speaker, we used to have cattle dips, we used to have research centers, we used to have people who used to visit the farms and work with the farmers. We used to have demonstration farms that could show the farmers some of the best practices. And we had localized kind of research that could tell this breed of maize, potato, or even coffee is doing good in this area. Madam Speaker, it may surprise you that the last time we came with a crop variety, the Loiro 11 of coffee, was way back in the 90s. Since that time, Madam Speaker, we've stagnated because we decided to devolve, and with it we devolved everything, and the budget that followed those functions was not devolved. This is where the rain started beating us, Madam Speaker. As we were interrogating this issue of the maize crop in Bomet, it was not lost to us, Madam Speaker. This is a problem that has continued to face many farmers, be it the coffee farmers, be it the tea farmers, even daily farming, Madam Speaker. We continue to face adverse movements of prices because of the global challenge that we have. The competition, and most of from the Latin American, Madam Speaker. The competition that we have from our neighboring countries, the Ethiopian. The competition that we have from our neighboring country down here, the Tanzanians, have given us not only land for our money, but have made most of the crops that we grow in Kenyan soil and competitive. I'm glad to say, Madam Speaker, that for the first time, we have a government that's quite intentional in reviving agripreneur, that is very intentional in empowering the farmers, and these can be evidenced and seen by the fact that this government is providing subsidized fertilizers that is accessible to all the farmers. However, Madam Speaker, it is not done by just supplying subsidized fertilizers. We must, and now that we have a population that's getting ever younger, we must come up with incentives that will make the younger generation see agribusiness as an opportunity. And I'm happy to say, Madam Speaker, more and more we are seeing younger people engaging themselves in farming and coming with coping this with the modern technology, and they are able to make good returns in this. Madam Speaker, if we have to sustain ourselves in terms of food, we must embrace the current technologies, we must embrace the best of practices in farming, but most importantly, Madam Speaker, we must ensure that farmers are provided with the light seeds. A light seed, Madam Speaker, would mean that it will be able to adapt to the climatic condition, it will be able to withstand the pests, and it will be able to withstand the diseases that can affect it. This, Madam Speaker, is no longer rocket science. Today, with biotechnology, it has become possible to eliminate threats in the genetic formation of a seed so that some of the diseases will not occur. However, Madam Speaker, that some of this sector has been held captive by some cartels. This remains a major challenge. Madam Speaker, I would want to challenge every one of us. I would want to tell every member of this Senate, it is the high time that we divorce ourselves from this sectionalism in politics and let's look at the challenges that this country is facing and ask ourselves a varied and genuine question: where do we want to see this country in the next 30 years? The decision that we make today, Madam Speaker, the decisions that are implemented today in the agricultural sector, and I'm happy that I sit in the Agricultural Committee where we are able to fundamentally engage and change some of the approaches and practices that we have so that we can make agriculture not just agriculture for subsistence, but as a main income earner. Madam Speaker, it has been mentioned, sometimes back the price of macadamia had collapsed. We were able, as the Agricultural Committee, engaging with the relevant authorities, we were able to ensure that the prices were stabilized. However, Madam Speaker, I would want to say from my personal research in some of the major consumers in the Asian countries, in the Indonesian country, macadamia still remains a very, very good crop if managed properly. However, Madam Speaker, the biggest challenge that we have in this country is at times we lack a strategic approach in the way of we sell our crops, and most importantly, in the way that we manage the bumper harvest that happens to come across the country, and therefore the farmers end up losing from the drop in prices. Having said that, Madam Speaker, I would want to commend the petitioner who brought up this petition. I would want to commend the committee that I sit in, because this should be a journey that will open doors for many other approaches that we should have. And as we're doing that, Madam Speaker, we would ask ourselves one fundamental question. The organizations we have that are supposed to be doing research, how well funded are they? How functional are they? How well do they work with other institutions of higher learning? Do they just import technology, or do they implement homegrown technology that will suit Kenyans? Madam Speaker, it is important to underline that the funding that's given to research institutions at times falls too short, that they are not able to do any meaningful change. And if we have to harvest the products of good research, then we must also be prepared to invest in it properly. As I wind up, Madam Speaker, let me say that it is very, very, very important that we realize that agriculture is not only important to provide us with food security, but it could be one of the answers that we are looking for to ensure that we create meaningful employment. But it should not stop just by growing the crops. It should not stop by just harvesting the crop. It should go on and say we must do value addition, and we must therefore interrogate along the value chain, Madam Speaker. Where can we be able to start opportunities, to create opportunities for the younger generation which is attractive enough for them, which is able to earn them enough income, but most importantly, ensure that we produce products that are processed and value added in a way that they become competitive in the foreign market. Madam Speaker, the world is becoming a global village, and therefore, the crops that are produced in Kenya, the same are produced in Peru, the same are produced in Brazil. How do we then make our products more competitive? Madam Speaker, if you go into a supermarket in Tokyo, you'll buy a packet of macadamia. Just by the way it is packaged, Madam Speaker, you'll have a feeling that this is more variable. Only for you to read the packaging and see that that is a product of Kenya, but it was exported, processed, and then packaged there. It is the high time now that we start leveraging the technology that is available so that we can ensure that our products get maximum profit and they are able to compete globally. As we do that, Madam Speaker, it must never be lost to us. The potential that we have as a country does not only lie in the Western countries, but within the African region. Madam Speaker, just the other day I was in Angola, and I realized the potential we have to sell our dairy product there is quite enormous. I was in Ghana, and I saw that the potential that we have to sell our Kenyan tea there is quite enormous. What we need to do, Madam Speaker, is to divorce ourselves from this being dependent on the dollar, because I keep on asking myself, why does Kenya need to have dollars to be able to trade with Uganda? Why do we need to have dollars to be able to trade with Tanzania? It is the high time now, within the East African region, within the SADC, within the Great Lake region, that we come up with a mechanism that will enable us to trade without over-relying on the foreign exchange, the hard currencies, the so-called dollars, because by so doing, we limit our opportunities, we make ourselves very, very vulnerable to external shocks, because the shortage of dollar in the American market will mean that it will affect our economy directly. As I wind up, Madam Speaker, I would want to challenge us all. It is the high time now we divorce ourselves from the toxic politics that we've been pushing and say that we must integrate this country in a way that will be able to trade with our neighbors, that will be able to ensure that the products that are produced in this country are not only competitive regionally, but also globally. And Madam Speaker, that is why I'm saying we must ensure that of the younger generation, the Gen Zs of this country, start embracing the new idea of agripreneur, which is leveraging the current technology with the trades across the globe. Madam Speaker, because I'm looking at the watch there, I might not be able to finish what I wanted to contribute to, but I can see I still have a couple of minutes to go, and I can say, Madam Speaker, as we talk about advancing our agriculture, as we talk about creating industries, as we talk about creating opportunities for our young people, let us invest in their education so that they'll be able to work on the research, so that they'll be able to come with new varieties, they'll be able to come with yields and crops that will withstand the climatic conditions. It must never be lost to us, Madam Speaker, that the kind of climatic conditions we had 20 years ago, the kind of pests that we had 20 years ago, they have genetically modified themselves and therefore made themselves more resistant to some of the pesticides that we use. And therefore, this is the high time that we say, why don't we leverage technology with the modern technology? Madam Speaker,
just to hold on a little, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Senators, I'd like to extend the session in accordance with the relevant standing order by 10 minutes after the 6:30 to enable the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As I conclude, I would want to say that this is a golden opportunity that the Senate has. Agriculture being a devolved function. Maybe it is the whole high time that we put our foot down, make sure that we bring the counties. And it is the high time, Madam Speaker, to start telling our governors, it is not the time of saying, come and buy. It is the time now to say that, let us show what it is that we have done for our counties. And this can only be seen by the direct input that we have in ensuring that we mainstream the younger generation into agripreneur and ensuring that our local institutions, our TFETs, are offering courses that are in tandem with what we have. And what we have, Madam Speaker, as the backbone of our economy is agripreneur, and that is the future of this country. And I'm sure, Madam Speaker, with the right decision, with the right interventions, and with the right commitment from the county governors, we can make sure that this country is food secure. We can ensure that we create enough opportunities for our young people, and most importantly is that we can ensure that no Kenyan will walk with a bow in the head to beg for food because this country is starving. Madam Speaker, I support.
The mover may now reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to take this opportunity to move, Honorable Speaker, that I want to appreciate the committee members that participated in writing of this report. Honorable Member Abbas, Honorable Wamatinga, Honorable Mundigi, Otieno Kajwang, Honorable Jienda, Honorable Mofire, and the entire team, Honorable Ezena, for being steadfast to ensure that this work is properly done. And I don't want to forget our able secretariat who have worked with us the entire journey of listening to this petition. I want equally to appreciate the petitioner for standing up for his people, standing up for their rights, and acknowledging that the Senate is a better place to articulate their issues, because we deal with facts and information that is justifiable. And Honorable Speaker, today the petitioner is a happy gentleman in Bomet, because the people of Bomet have a reason to confide in the Senate and their leadership. Honorable Member, I also want to appreciate the senators who have stood up to congratulate, contribute, and equally add flesh and content to this discussion. Honorable Speaker, I want to appreciate Honorable Cheregei, Honorable Cheriota, Majority Leader, Mheshimiwa wa Mungatana, Mheshimiwa Ledama, Mheshimiwa Sigei, the host senator, Daktari Mondigi, and finally Mheshimiwa Wamatinga. Honorable Speaker, when you listen to all these gentlemen, the senators who have talked here today, they concur that agriculture is devolved. They agree that the devolution of agriculture was not meant to punish the people of Kenya and the people in counties, but the proprietors of devolution expected that the county government will stand up to be counted and use the devolved monies to improve the welfare of farmers by pumping resources into agriculture institutes, train farmers, expose farmers, and work in collaboration with the national government to obviate what we have seen in this petition, Honorable Speaker. Mheshimiwa Speaker, you've seen what these members have said. The reluctance of government and state agents from articulating and sorting issues at the grassroots level and leaving people to the mercies of God and nature. We want to talk to Kenyans and assure them that as a committee, we are going to ensure that every arm of government and county government will be held responsible and accountable to the people, and they must be able to offer solutions and not only be part of the participants of causing agony and trouble to Kenyans. Members have articulated here, Honorable Speaker, that the collapse of training institutions is a major blow to this country. There is a big clamor for universities, Honorable Speaker, but you can't have universities without food, Honorable Speaker. You can't have facilities and infrastructure in this government without food, Honorable Speaker. Enough food and surplus is a tool or a means for people to add money into their pockets. So as a committee, we'll do that. Finally, in terms of the recommendations, as I've put here, Honorable Speaker, we will ensure that we pursue the recommendations as ably requested by Honorable Sigei, that we will request the implementation of this thing
squarely to be part of the liaison committee, and we shall do what needs to be done. Finally, Honorable Speaker, I want to assure the people that we represent as an agriculture committee, the wheat industry, the sugar industry, macadamia industry, the rice industry, the cotton industry, the nut and crop oil industry, the livestock participants, and the fisheries of this country. If you have a problem, kindly reach out to us. We will swiftly move in and assist and create solutions. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 663, I request that we defer putting of the question to a later date, because looking at the numbers in the House, Honorable Speaker, we will not be able to complete the process now. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and may God bless Kenya. Thank you.
Putting of the question is so deferred.
Thank you.
Honorable Senators, it is now 6:33 p.m. and having concluded the business for which I extended the hours of sitting pursuant to Standing Order 34-2A, the Senate stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 6th March 2025 at 2:30 p.m.